What would you do if you were invited to a black tie dinner and dancing aboard the Queen Mary? You'd go, of course, and have a grand time. You find the evening is magical, the dinner is spectacular, the champagne is flowing, and the music beckons you to the dance floor. But then a dashing gentleman enters and quickly turns the head of all female guests. His allure is strong, and if he asks you to dance, you can't help but to say yes. But who is he, and where did he come from? Hello there, welcome. Thank you for joining me on another night filled with tales of terror. So in tonight's video, we are going to venture on to the Queen Mary and attend a black tie dinner. There's going to be a lot of who's who there, along with maybe a stranger. Anyway, while you're listening to this video, you may be wondering if what you're hearing is fact or fiction or somewhere in between. All I ask is that you wait until the end of the video so we can all find out together just what it is that we heard. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you to get comfortable, click the like and subscribe buttons, turn down the lights, and let's begin. The port town of San Pedro is neighbor to Long Beach, where the luxurious Queen Mary resides. And with all its glamour and mystery, people jump at the chance to come aboard to be taken back in time with its timely architecture and decor. It's quite a lovely experience. But let's not forget about the tragedies that have occurred aboard the Queen Mary. There are several deaths that are connected in one way or another to this dazzling vessel. There are several reports of ghost encounters from guests that have visited the Queen Mary, but that is not what we are going to talk about tonight, as that is a story for another time. Tilly was a hard-working woman with 3 children. Her husband had disappeared one day, never to be heard from again. People often wondered what happened to him. He didn't seem to be the sort of man that would abandon his family, so foul play was always suspected. Tilly worked as a secretary to Joe Branzino, the owner of one of the biggest fishing companies in San Pedro. Joe and his wife Kathleen had looked at Tilly as more than an employee. She had become like family to them. And without any children of their own, they spoiled the heck out of Tilly's 3 children whenever they could. Tilly greatly appreciated all that they did and worked very hard to earn such kindness. The holidays were approaching quickly. Halloween had just passed and we were coming up on Thanksgiving. Joe and Kathleen had always invited Tilly and her children to join them, but Tilly had her sister Angie and Angie's husband Howard along with their 2 children to celebrate with. She appreciated the Branzino's invitation for Thanksgiving dinner, but she really enjoyed taking time to spend with Angie, who was also a very hard-working woman. She had taken a job in Long Beach at one of the canneries where her husband also worked. They had different shifts, which worked out great. One would drop off the kids at school and the other would pick them up. They didn't really see each other that much during the week, and they were fine with that. They were just happy to be a constant in the lives of their children. Dinner was lovely. Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie, and all the fixings that go with making Thanksgiving dinner memorable. The following morning, Tilly got to work on time as usual. As she got to her desk and began setting herself up for the day, she was surprised when Joe's office door opened. He's never this early. She was further surprised when 2 tall men dressed all in black walked out of Joe's office. They walked past Tilly without a word. As soon as they were out of the office, Tilly got to her feet to check in Joe's office. He was there, sitting behind his desk. He looked distracted, not like his usual focused businessman with a kind heart self. Something was wrong, and those men had something to do with it, Tilly thought. "Are you all right?" Tilly asked Joe. "Oh yes, I'm fine," Joe replied. Tilly looked back to the front door, then back at Joe. "Who were those guys?" she asked. Joe really didn't want to talk about it. He brushed off the question by saying they were insurance salesmen there to sell him some life insurance. Then he finally gave in and met with them, and she wouldn't be seeing them around anymore. His answer made sense, I guess, Tilly thought. If you're going to take a meeting that you really don't want to do, then why not do it the first thing in the morning before anyone even shows up for work, Get it out of the way. But something else bothered Tilly about this so-called insurance meeting. Joe wasn't the sort of man to be bullied into anything, let alone a meeting with guys trying to sell you life insurance. And why were there 2 salesmen? Then it hit her. What if Joe is sick? Oh my gosh, what if he's terminally ill and trying to keep it from everyone? That made his whole secretive meeting make sense. I won't pry any further, Joe, but if you need anything, I'm here to help. Tilly smiled and left back to her desk. The weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas came and went quickly, and those 2 men were pretty much forgotten about. Joe was in high spirits. He loved the Christmas season. So did Kathleen. They made that apparent when they showed up at Tilly's house 3 days before Christmas with gifts for her children. They sat with Tilly and drank coffee, watching the little ones open up the gifts they brought for them. When that was finished, and the kids thanked Uncle Joe and Auntie Kathleen for their Christmas treasures, they scampered off to play with them. I honestly can't thank you both enough, Tilly told them sincerely. You both have greatly blessed me over the years. I only wish I could do the same for you. You do so much as it is, Kathleen stated. We are so thankful for you being a part of our lives. And your babies? We love them like they're our own. Before you 2 ladies start to get all weepy, I want to give you this, Joe said as he handed an envelope to Tilly. Tilly knew that it was her Christmas bonus and that it was going to be a generous one at that. But she was shocked when she saw the amount of the bonus. It was 3 times her regular bonuses combined. She looked at them with complete shock in her eyes. This must be a mistake, she muttered. No mistake, Joe responded kindly. You deserve that and so much more, Tilly. Which leads me to this, Kathleen chimed in, handing Tilly another envelope. I'm not sure I can accept anything more from the both of you, Tilly said as she looked at the envelope in front of her. Yes, you can, Kathleen responded as she nudged Tilly to open the second envelope. Giving in, Tilly opened it and found a ticket to the annual New Year's Eve ball. It was a big event with all of high society in attendance, and the event always took place on the Queen Mary inside their illustrious ballroom. I can't go, Tilly said as she slipped the ticket back into the envelope. That is an amazing gift, but I already have plans with Angie and Howard for New Year's Eve. Kathleen and Joe shared a glance, then turned back to Tilly. Bring them too, Joe said as he pulled 2 more tickets from his jacket pocket. Tilly's eyes widened with the thrill of them going aboard the Queen Mary for such an amazing event. Keeping her excitement at bay, Tilly responded back to them with more gratitude, but also reminding them that between Angie, Howard, and herself, they had 5 children. Kathleen cut her off before she could finish speaking. We've got the children covered too. They can come stay at our place and enjoy a big slumber party together. Our staff is more than capable of hosting this small event for the children, and they will be safely in the best hands possible. They met Tilly at every corner. They weren't going to take no for an answer. But I don't have anything to wear to such an event, Tilly said, knowing that sounded like a pathetic excuse even to her. Your bonus offers you more than enough money to put yourself in a lovely gown, Kathleen responded. It seemed there was no other excuse Tilly could come up with to not attend something that she really wanted to go to. So the decision is made, yes? Kathleen asked. Let me check with Angie and Howard first. They may not want to go, and if that's the case, I feel obligated to stay behind with them. Joe slid all the tickets to Tilly. I'm sure they're going to be happy to attend, and we can make this into a bit of a networking event for Howard. I can introduce him to some different business people that might be able to help him develop his career and earning potential. That was the nail in the coffin for Tilly. It was an opportunity for Angie and Howard to make a better lives for themselves. Of course, they would say yes. They'd be fools not to. Later that week, after Tilly approached Angie and Howard with Joe and Kathleen's proposition, they did exactly as she thought. They said yes. Though Howard was a little uncomfortable with the whole premise of parading around the party looking for someone to hire him. Nevertheless, Tilly and Angie found themselves at a dress shop trying on different gowns. They were silly with excitement, behaving like 2 teenage girls getting ready for prom. The night before the event, Tilly packed all the kids into her car to take over to Joe and Kathleen's home. She would ride to the Queen Mary with them and later come home with Angie and Howard. Everyone, including the kids, were excited about the evening. It's going to be so great, one of the kids cheered. Tilly was happy seeing the big smiles on everyone's faces. It was indeed going to be a great night. When Tilly arrived at the Queen Mary with Joe and Kathleen, she couldn't believe her eyes. It was a sight to behold. Everyone was dressed to the nines. Every person there was beautiful. As she took in all of the wealth and beauty of the place, Tilly saw Angie and Howard waving them over. So she excitedly hurried over to them. "Have you seen any movie stars yet?" she asked. Ecstatic and starstruck, Angie points to different people. "Look, there's Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor." "Oh my gosh, look over there," Angie whispered as she pointed to Robert Kennedy having a conversation with Princess Margaret. The guest list was overwhelming. Tilly couldn't believe her eyes. Neither could Angie and Howard, for that matter. That night, they met Audrey Hepburn, Cary Grant, Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, Sophia Loren, Dean Martin, Rock Hudson, Julie Christie, Doris Day, and Brigitte Bardot. Everyone was gracious towards Tilly and Angie, all saying to Tilly that it was an honor to meet her. "Why do they keep saying that?" Tilly asked Angie. Angie shrugged and suggested that maybe Joe and Kathleen had made mention of Tilly to the others beforehand. Who knew? Howard spent most of his time next to Joe and other businessmen. Joe was doing exactly as he had promised Tilly. He was putting Howard in direct contact with prominent men that could surely help Howard to become a major success in life. When it was time for dinner, everyone took their seats and enjoyed a delicious meal of roast beef, creamy fondant potatoes, glazed vegetables, and a lovely slice of cake for dessert. As dinner came to an end, a man entered the party. In his tuxedo, he was the most beautiful man anyone could ever lay their eyes on. Who was he? He introduced himself as David. Kathleen leaned into Tilly and told her that David had a hand in everyone's success here in one way or another. Tilly found that a little hard to believe as she looked at Kathleen. Kathleen told her David had many connections worldwide and to not doubt that what she was saying was any sort of stretch of the truth. Tilly looked around the room and could see how the entire room was captivated by David. So maybe it was true. David greeted the guests, asking if everyone was enjoying their night. Everyone responded with a resounding yes, thank you, and cheers. As David spoke, he made eye contact with Tilly. She immediately blushed and looked away. Wrapping up his welcome speech, David suggested the music begin and began making his way over to her. "Oh my gosh, he's headed this way. Why is he coming over here?" Tilly nervously asked Angie, who was all smiles at the sight of him. David approached their table. He shook hands with Howard, stating that he'd be interested in a conversation with him sometime. He kissed Angie's hand, making her blush bright red. Then he turned to Tilly. "May I have this dance?" he politely asked her. There was no way Tilly was going to say no. That would be rude and impolite, so she practically jumped to her feet as she said yes. David danced with Tilly, then went on to dance with other women as well, but he kept looking over at her and coming back to dance with her more and more. Howard was getting tired and reminded Angie that they had plans to leave before the new year to go home and have their own private celebration. Angie had to tear herself away from the party, wishing Tilly a great rest of the night after confirming that she would get a ride home with Joe and Kathleen. In the car, Angie and Howard were gleaming with all the fun they had. Angie pulled her visor down to look at herself in the mirror. "Howard, why didn't you tell me I needed to put some lipstick on?" she complained. Howard just shrugged. He didn't know to say these things. Angie looked around at her seat, the floor, and the back seat. She left her purse at the party, so they turned the car around to head back. Howard was a bit annoyed. He looked at his watch and saw that it was almost midnight when he pulled back into the parking lot. "I'll be very fast," Angie promised as she hurried out of the car. When she got to the entrance of the ship, the doorman stopped her, telling her that it was a private party and she couldn't go in there. She explained to them that she had attended the party but left her purse inside and she was only going to get it. They wanted proof by showing them her ticket. The tickets were in her purse and she would show them once she was able to grab her purse. Howard saw that Angie was being held up by these guys, so he went to help her. He told the guys that his wife was telling them the truth and that they needed to let her pass so she could get her purse. They continued to refuse, so Howard became a little more direct with them, pulling their attention away from Angie. Angie knew exactly what Howard was doing, giving her a brief opportunity to slip past them, which is exactly what she did. Angie could hear everyone counting down to midnight as she ran towards the ballroom. The clock struck midnight and everyone began cheering and dancing to the new year. David swirled Tilly around as they danced. Tilly was in heaven. As she danced with David, though, she wasn't sure if it was the champagne or was she just getting dizzy from all of the twirling. But David's appearance began to change. Tilly suddenly realized that the changes in his appearance were real. She began to try to break away from him, but he didn't seem to want to let her go. Instead, he pulled her into him and began kissing her. Tilly was instantly disgusted. His breath and his saliva were hot and foul. Then she began to smell something burning. It was a horrific sulfur odor. The other guests smelled it too and began to scream fire. A panic ensued, and all of the guests began trampling over each other to get out of the ballroom. Tilly was also panicked, but for an entirely different reason. Angie ran into the ballroom and saw David passionately kissing Tilly. That's when she screamed. It would have been fine with Angie to see David kissing Tilly, except when she looked down at his feet, there were now goat hooves where his shiny shoes used to be. She began to scream for Tilly to get away from him. Everyone was pushing and shoving to get out of the ballroom, all the while Angie was trying to get to Tilly as Tilly was reaching for Angie to help her. Howard and the doorman heard the screaming as they were suddenly bombarded with guests barreling towards them. Howard looked around for Angie but didn't see her, so he rushed into the crowd and towards the ballroom to find her and Tilly. He reached the ballroom just in time to see the last of the guests running out. Then he saw Angie strangely shoved out by an invisible force, throwing her to the ground. He made it just in time to see Tilly being held back by what looked like the devil himself as she desperately screamed and reached for the doors that just slammed shut in front of him. "We have to get her out of there," Angie screamed to Howard. They both began banging against the doors to burst them open. They could hear Tilly's desperate cries. Then the doors swung open and Tilly was there clasping them, forcing her way out of the ballroom. They saw David, the devil, lying on the floor like he'd been knocked out. It looked like Tilly was going to make it out of there to safety and freedom, but she was suddenly yanked backwards in the room by an unseen force. The doors immediately slammed solidly shut after her. Angie and Howard pounded on the doors as they heard Tilly's screams. They could not get her out. Someone had called the police and fire department because, to Angie and Howard's relief, they came rushing in. Angie screamed for them to hurry, telling them he's got her sister trapped in there. The police tried to get Angie to calm down by asking her who was in there. They were shocked when she told them that the devil was in there and he had her sister. The firefighters and police could also hear Tilly's screams as they tried to pry the doors open. But then, suddenly, all went silent. They opened the doors and cautiously entered the ballroom. There was no sign of Tilly or David. The only thing they saw that was out of ordinary was a fresh burn mark in the middle of the dance floor. Tilly was never heard from again. Joe and Kathleen took custody of Tilly's kids, showing Angie and Howard a legal document that had apparently been signed by Tilly without their knowledge. They tried to fight it, but lost. It was close to 20 years later, and the burn stain could never be removed from the floor in the ballroom, no matter what was tried. To make matters worse, there have been several reports by members of the Queen Mary's cleaning crew stating that if you stand where the burn mark is, you can hear a woman screaming. Could it be Tilly? Okay, so what did you all think about this video? Do you think that Joe and Kathleen knew what was going on the whole time? Did anybody really know who David was? Well, one question I can answer for sure is that, yes, this story is a work of fiction that I conjured up in my scary brain. So before we say goodnight, I just want to ask you to click the like and subscribe buttons and then to prepare for more tales of terror delivered to you weekly at 3 a.m. So until then, stay safe and stay scary.